Welcome, everyone. I will give a short introduction. So, a warm welcome from myself, and Isabella. Thank you for joining our webinar. My name is Michael Janssens, for those who don't know me yet, and I'm the Denkavit area manager for part of Asia. Hopefully, one day we can meet in person. That would be really nice. So, today we will address whether you should feed cow's milk or possibly opt for a calf milk replacer. Choosing the right feeding strategy for your calves is a crucial decision that impacts their health, growth, and ultimately your farm's profitability. So we will now have a thorough, in-depth webinar on this to explore the key differences, benefits, and challenges of both options. This is backed by research and practical experience. This session will help you make an informed decision tailored to your farm's needs. And then the next slide, Isabel. So maybe a few instructions. If you have a question during the presentation, there's a box below for Q&A. So you can submit your question there, and then we will summarize and answer the question at the end of the presentation. Then also during the presentation, there will be 3 poll questions. So it'd be nice if you can share how it is in your situation, so we can also learn from that. Thank you for sharing. So, okay, next slide, please. Oh, yes. And now it's my great honor to introduce to you Dr. Isabella Carvalho. She was born in Brazil, but moved to the Netherlands in 2013. With a PhD in animal nutrition, she's uniquely qualified as Denkavit's product manager, Young Ruminants. She has been working with ruminants since her academics, and now and then she joins me also to visit farms, to understand the local challenges and provide technical support. Without further ado, I'm pleased to give the word to Isabella.
Thank you, Michael, for the introduction, and thank you everyone for joining. So like Michael already introduced, today we are going to discuss the impact of feeding choices for your calves. So there are mainly 2 big choices that you can make for the liquid feeding of your cows, which is cow milk or calf milk replacer. But there are more details into that. So we are going to look at them. So the feeding choice for your calf will have an impact. Will have an impact on the growth of the calf, but it will also have an impact on the health, on the cost for your calf rearing, also which type of protocol you are going to choose or you are going to define, the amount of labor, the time spent with calf rearing, the herd health, all of that together ultimately will result on the farm profitability and the productivity of your dairy cows. But I want to start with these questions. With this question, what does the calf need? Well, the calf needs the liquid feeding, and that's the milk or the milk replacer. Especially in the young calf, that will be the main source of energy, protein, minerals, and vitamins for the calf. So very important for the calf, the choice of the liquid feeding. But the calf also needs water because all the metabolic process in the body of the calf requires water to happen. The calf needs to be hydrated, and the calf also needs water in the rumen in order to aid the fermentation in the rumen. And that comes to the third need of the calf, which is the solid feed. So in the end, you want your calf to become an efficient, high productive dairy cow. Or if we are talking about a dairy beef system, you want the calf also to be able to digest the feed, to produce a good carcass. And for that, during the rearing phase, you want the rumen to be developed. So the calf also needs a good intake of solid feed. So those are the main 3, let's say, nutritional groups. But there is something very important also linked to the nutrition of the calf that sometimes is overlooked, and that's consistency. So young calves, they thrive on consistency. Consistency of feeding time. So feeding your calf every day on the same time so he knows what to expect. Consistency on the nutritional content of the feed. So having a constant protein, energy level, the temperature of the liquid feeding of the milk replacer is important that this temperature is above the body temperature of the calf. So above 40 degrees, the body temperature of the calf will be between 38.5 and 39.5 degrees. So you want to provide the liquid feed above that temperature that will trigger the esophageal groove and also the concentration. So calves can be very sensitive if the solid content of the liquid feed is very variable throughout the days. That's a challenging for them in order to digest this milk properly. So that's what the calf need. And now we will focus on the liquid feeding, right? The milk or the milk replacer. But first, let's talk about cow's milk. Are they all the same? We can, in a farm, in a dairy farm, we have two big groups of cow milk. We have the saleable milk, and that's the tank milk or the bulk milk. But we also have the non-saleable milk. And different types of milk will go to this non-saleable milk pool, including leftover of colostrum, transition milk, high somatic cell count milk, antibiotic milk, or mastitis milk. So then I come to my first question to you. What is the main feeding choice in your farm, or if you are a nutritionist among your clients, in your region? Is it milk replacer, raw tank milk, meaning non-pasteurized tank milk, pasteurized tank milk, or waste antibiotic milk? I don't see the poll question. Is it? Oh yeah, now I see. So if you can just click on the answer. Okay, I see milk replacer, raw tank milk. Those are the main ones so far. Um, yeah, so we'll give a few more minutes. Yes. So the majority in this meeting feed calf milk replacer. And the second place was raw tank milk and just 5% of pasteurized tank milk and 5% antibiotic milk. So that's interesting. Overall, we normally see about 60% of calf milk replacer use. So it looks quite representative also among the mature markets that we visit. Yes. So coming back to the types of cow milk. If we look at the non-saleable milk, sometimes leftover colostrum and transition milk, it's also mixed with the non-saleable milk. And those are very rich and important types of milk for your cow. So um, this is not a presentation about colostrum, but I just want to highlight the importance of colostrum. So colostrum should be really the first feeding of the calf. The sooner the better, because with time, the absorption of the immunoglobulins will reduce. And our golden standard for colostrum, so our Denkavit recommendation is to use a colostrum with a Brix of at least 23%, because that will give 69 grams of IgG per liter of colostrum. So it's easier to provide 200 grams of IgGs in the first feeding. If you take a good colostrum with a lower volume, then you can provide these 200 grams of IgG in the first 3 hours. And we also recommend to feed colostrum on a second and possibly third feeding. So in the first 24 hours, those calves, they will get 400 grams of IgG. So that's for day 1. On the following feedings, so day 2, 3, even day 4 of life, using transition milk, it's also beneficial. So there is a lot of research showing that transition milk improve the growth of calves, improve the development of the intestine, and it also supports the immunity of those animals. I will show those research in a minute, but I just want to establish here what is transition milk. Because depending on the country and the language, it can also be called different names. It can also be called like fresh cow milk. And in many places, you cannot mix that milk into the tank milk, into the bulk tank milk. So colostrum is the first milking. It's not from the first day, but it's just the first milking after calving. And that's the milk, that's the colostrum that is really rich on IgG. That's what the calf should get in the first feeding. After the first milking, from milking 2 to 6, so first on the up to the third day after calving, this is called transition milk. So colostrum is very high in IgGs and specific bioactive components. And those bioactive components and IgGs, they start to reduce, but is in a linear manner up to the around the 7 milking. So let's say the 4th day after calving, that's when we have really like whole milk. And this transition milk, oh, before I talk about transition milk, I would like to ask you, what is it done with transition milk in your farm or among your clients or in your region? Does it go to the bulk tank milk? Is it fed to heifer calves? Is it fed to bull calves? Is it mixed in the non-saleable milk or is just thrown away? Okay, I see that a lot is going to heifer calf, so that's very nice. 20% goes to the bulk tank milk. A lot of it is fed to heifer cow, so that's very nice. I can see that you are on top of what is happening and the newest recommendations. Still 10% is thrown away. And in many cases, it is thrown away because it's more difficult to handle, like you don't have the capacity to pasteurize or you need extra freezers in order to be able to store this transition milk. But it's very important to know that, yes, it's very important to understand that if you have the capacity to use the transition milk, that can make a very positive difference in your herd. So this is the work of Van Soest, and he was comparing feeding transition milk or milk replacer after colostrum. And after these days of transition milk, so he fed transition milk for 3 days, then all the calves would go to the same milk replacer, so the same feeding. And just by feeding transition milk for 3 days, he observed an increase in growth of 3 kilos of body weight. But not only, they also demonstrated that the calves that received transition milk had a better intestinal development. So you can see in these pictures, that's the transition milk group versus the milk replacer group. They had greater villi length and width. They have more mucosal and submucosal thickness. So those calves, they were prepared to digest better the nutrients of the milk replacer after the diet was changed. So we established colostrum and transition milk. Those are very positive for the calves. And now we have the rest of the non-saleable milk, and that's what we call the waste milk. So high somatic cell count milk, antibiotic milk, and mastitis milk. And now I get to my last put question of the webinar. What do you do with waste milk in your farm, or what do you see happening among your clients or your region? Does it go to the bulk tank milk? Is it fed to heifers? Is it fed to bull calves? Is it sold or is thrown away? So I see now a little bit fed to heifers, not too much. The majority is thrown away. I think you're gonna agree with me in the end that that's indeed um, the the best thing to do with waste milk. Some is fed to bull calves and 14% fed to heifers. Okay, thank you for sharing. So waste milk, why not? That's a question that I get all the time because it has no commercial value, so it's almost like free feed for your cows. Well, the problem with waste milk is that pasteurization is not able to reduce the antimicrobial residues of the waste milk. So you are basically feeding um, antibiotics for your calves that they don't need. Another point is that the quality of waste milk varies a lot. So the variation of protein, of fat, of energy is very variable. It's also variable in tank milk, but it's way more variable in waste milk, especially the somatic cell, the high somatic cell count milk. It's very variable. It's also lower in nutrient digestibility, the high somatic cell count milk. Because of this antibiotic residue, the waste milk, the antibiotic milk, it's going to influence the composition of the intestinal microbiota of the calves. So that will cause a dysbiosis, and these calves, they are more prone, more susceptible to disease. That's when it goes to the intestine. But it's also not uncommon that a little bit of milk will just spill in the rumen. So the cows can rumen drink if the temperature is not correct or if the teeth have a problem. And these antibiotics following the rumen also affects the rumen development. So it will be more difficult to wean your calves when you are feeding them with antibiotic milk. There is a very interesting recent study, and this is on the Journal of Dairy Science, that evaluated the effect of tank milk, waste milk, and pasteurized waste milk on the antimicrobial resistance to E. coli. I'll explain the trial. So they took a group of healthy calves and they took the milk, the pooled milk from those calves, and they fed directly to calves. So that was group one, and the milk was not pasteurized. Then in a second group of calves, those cows, they had mastitis or other issues, and they were treated with 7 types of antibiotics. This was just the normal standard of the farm. They were treating for the disease they would normally treat with the antibiotics they would normally treat. And then for the second group of calves, they directly fed this waste milk to the calves. And for the third group of calves, they pasteurized the milk and then they fed the waste pasteurized milk to the calves. So 3 groups: bulk tank milk, waste milk, and pasteurized waste milk. After 30 and 60 days, they collect the feces of the 3 groups of calves, and they did a test where they test the antimicrobial resistance. And they do that by isolating the E. coli strains from the calves. They put it in a petri dish like this. This is just an illustrative figure. And then they put these little papers, which are embedded with the antibiotics. And then you can see here the inhibition halo in this petri dish. So everything that is that is a little bit darker, a little bit whiter actually, that's where the bacteria is growing. And everything that you see is clear, that's when the antibiotic is able to inhibit the growth of the bacteria. So they did that for all the 7 antibiotics that the cows were treated for. And we're going to see the results in a minute. This is just the results from the somatic cell count of the tank milk, waste milk, and pasteurized waste milk. So as you can see, the pasteurized waste milk had much more somatic cell count. Sorry, the waste milk and the pasteurized waste milk. And this is just the total bacteria count. So the tank milk, although it was not pasteurized, had had a good amount of total bacteria count. So it's still within the threshold to be positive, to be used. Waste milk and even the pasteurized waste milk had much higher total bacteria count. But back to the results with the antimicrobial resistance. What they determined in this trial is that waste milk and pasteurized waste milk treatments, they had a much higher prevalence of E. coli that were resistant for 5 out of the 7 antibiotics that the cows were treated. So what does that mean for a farm? You have a group of cows, they are treated with antibiotic. You feed this waste milk to your cows. You are going to select bacteria with genes that are resistant to the antibiotics that those cows were treated for. And those genes will be spread in the herd. It will be spread when the calf reach the milking herd, but it will also be spread through the manure. So even when you feed the bull calf with antibiotic milk, there is a risk of spreading the resistance gene in the overall farm. And what happens is that your dairy cows will have a lower response to antibiotic. And then you're going to have more waste milk. And then you're going to feed more cows with waste milk. And that just becomes a vicious cycle. So waste milk contributes to the dissemination of antimicrobial resistance. And that's also when it is pasteurized. So waste milk should not be used to feed cows. And then we come to the last part of cow's milk, which is tank milk that can be either raw milk or pasteurized milk. So let's talk about cow's milk. There are also positive things about cow's milk. First, it is available in every dairy farm. So it feels like there is no out-of-the-pocket cost. Of course, it's not free. The farm sells cow's milk. So if you have more milk to sell, you have more income, but there is not really an invoice for it. It's also a good source of protein for cows. It's high in energy, and it contains bioactive components. So the bioactive components, they are very rich in colostrum, and we are talking specific proteins like lactoferrin, but also specific sugars, hormones. So they are very high in colostrum. They start to reduce in the transition milk, but they are also present to some extent into the cow's milk. But there are challenges when you feed cow milk. And the first challenge is the pH of milk. The pH of cow milk is around 7. And if you see this graph here, that's the neutrophiles bacteria. So the majority of the pathogenic bacteria, the intestinal bacteria, they are in this category. And the highest growth rate for a bacteria is on pH 7. So young cows, they already have a lower resistance. Right? We raise those calves with a lot of animals around. We separate them from the mother very quickly. So they are already on a lot of pressure, under a lot of pressure. So this rapid growth of bacteria in cow milk can be very challenging for the calf. There are also several diseases that can be transmitted via cow milk. So when a farm have issues with John's disease, for example, it's not advisable to feed the calves with non-pasteurized cow milk. But of course, you can pasteurize the milk. And pasteurization overall is effective in reducing the load of bacteria in milk. So in this table here, I have the target, so that's the goal of the standard plate count, but also for other types of medium for bacteria, other types of bacteria. And in this graph here, we have the percentage of samples that meets those targets. And the red one is before pasteurization. So what is the ideal? The ideal is 100%. You want 100% of your samples to meet the targets that are on the table. Before pasteurizing the whole milk, that's lower, of course. Huh? The milk is raw, it has bacteria. It depends a lot on how it is collected, how it is milked, the hygiene, the timing, and so on. But overall, you're going to have more bacteria there than desired. After pasteurization, you really increase the amount of samples meeting the target. So you improve the quality, the microbiological quality of your milk. But notice that that's not always 100%. It also depends if the pasteurization process is really done properly. And this is a trial, so that was really controlled pasteurization. But the interesting and the reason why I'm showing you this figure is because after the milk is pasteurized, it's normally pasteurized at 72 degrees. So you need to wait for the milk to cool down. So you need to wait until the milk is at least 45 degrees in order to feed to the calves. And when they tested the milk again, after it is in the calf bucket, the combination of the high pH, the warm temperature, also perfect for bacteria, and this residual bacteria that pasteurization cannot completely kill, really reduce the quality of that milk. So you see, especially for the standard plate count and the coliforms, quite a difference between the sample that is taken out of the pasteurizer and the sample that is taken in the calf bucket. So pasteurization can be an application challenge when you feed cow milk, the way it is done, right? The feeding time is also an application challenge because you get dependent on the milking time. You cannot decouple the calf rearing from your milking herd. Temperature, that's an interesting one because you need either to warm up the milk to meet the above 40 degrees, or you need to pasteurize and wait for the milk to cool down. That's even more important when calves are fed in buckets without teat, because then you really need to be very critical about the temperature. And the last challenge is consistency. Remember, we spoke about how calves thrives on consistency. So the consistency on solid content, on the composition, and on the nutritional content can be challenged when you feed cow milk. It's better when you feed the bulk tank milk because then you have more cows, you reduce the amplitude of variation. But we also see farms that they choose a few cows to use the milk from these few calves to calves, and then you have a much larger variation in the composition of that milk. Another challenge is that the requirement of the calf in terms of vitamins and minerals and the amount of those nutrients in cow milk, they don't always match. And that's because we select our cows to produce more milk, but not to produce more vitamins, not to produce more minerals. So there is a mismatch. I highlighted here the blue bars, that's the requirement of the calf, and the dark blue bar, that's what is available in cow in cow's milk. So we see a large mismatch regarding to iron. We know that cow's milk is very low in iron, but also important vitamins for the antioxidant system, so vitamin E, or the immune system like vitamin D. There is a mismatch. So I will discuss some strategies how we can reduce the risk when using cow's milk. The first strategy is to supplement the required vitamins and minerals. And this is a vitamin and mineral supplement that we have. It's called Vital Add. And we did several trials. I will show you one to have a good idea. So this was done in a commercial farm in general. The control was whole milk without supplementation, and the treatment was 10 grams of this vitamin and mineral supplement. So what we see, and this is the vitamin and iron status for vitamin E, vitamin D, and iron of the calves. So we see that supplementing the vitamins and minerals really increase the vitamin E status of the calf, the vitamin D status of the calf, and the iron status of the calf. So if we take vitamin D as an example, what is the threshold? How much vitamin D do you want to see on those calves? So for the calcium and phosphorus metabolism, the threshold is 20 nanograms per liter of serum. That's sufficient to realize a proper calcium and phosphorus metabolism. Here we have an average above 20, but it also means that there was variation among the calves. So some calves were not meeting this target. But another threshold for vitamin D is 30 nanomoles per liter. And that's the threshold that improves the immune system of the calf. So you probably remember at the time of COVID, where a lot of studies was done with animal models, targeting people, of course, that was determining that vitamin D improve the immune response to respiratory health problems in people. And that's the same with calf. So for the immune status, we actually want a vitamin D status above 30. And remembering that you want that for all the calves. In this study, we also saw a significant reduction on the diarrhea incidence by adding the supplement. And the explanation for that is because of the acidification. So the supplementation does not only supply extra vitamin and minerals, but it also helps slightly acidifying whole milk. And then I want to show this figure here, which we did in our lab. We took cow milk, so whole cow milk, cold 19 degrees and warm 42 degrees, with Vital Add, so with the supplement, which is also an acidifier, and without Vital Add. And what we see is that, first, cold milk, it's more difficult to coagulate. You know, the milk needs to coagulate in order for the calf to digest it, milk with casein. So we see here that 90 degrees, no supplementation, very poor coagulation. 19 degrees with supplementation, so with acidification, the coagulation is better. And the ideal coagulation happens when you offer the cow milk warm in the correct temperature and with some acidification. Another strategy that is very successful in our experience is to make a mix between whole milk and milk replacer. So 50% whole milk, 50% milk replacer. That will not completely eliminate the daily variation of whole milk, but it just reduces the amplitude, because you take one element that is more variable, which is cow milk, and you take one element that is very consistent, which is milk replacer, and when you mix them, you just reduce the amplitude. It also helps to supply the minerals and vitamins that are lacking. It is possible to increase the solid content, And that's a very practical point, which I think is very important for the farmers that are choosing for this option, which is it helps to adjust the final drinking temperature. So I'll give an example. If your goal is to prepare 100 liters of milk and your bulk tank milk has 12.5% dry matter, the final, 12.5% solids, the final concentration, the desired final concentration is 150 grams per liter. So what do? You take 30 liters of water, you warm the water to 45 to 55 degrees. Then you add the milk replacer in an amount that the final concentration of this will be 175 grams per liter. So you mix for 3 minutes. You complete the volume to 50 mLs, also with warm water. So after this step, you're gonna have 50 liters of milk replacer at about 50 degrees with 175 gram per liter of solids. Then you add 50 liters of tank milk. And when you add the 50 liters of tank milk, the final concentration will be 150 grams per liter. And if the tank milk is about 38, 37 degrees, then you will have the final temperature also about 40 degrees. So the good temperature for the calves. So that's a very practical strategy. There is also farms and our customers that they use whole milk just to increase the solid content of cow milk. And that also works. This is a study published also in the Journal of Dairy Science, where they took whole milk with 12.5% solids, and they use milk replacer to stepwise increase the solid concentration of the whole milk. I will not go through a lot of details, but those calves, they were weaned at 60 days, but they were monitored up to day 90. And of course, if you are increasing the solid concentration, you are also increasing the dry matter supply. So the amount of protein, the amount of energy you are giving to those calves, they increase linearly. So here, 730 grams per day up to more than 1 kilo per day. So if you're feeding more to the calf, it's natural that you see the calf growing more. And between the first treatment and the last treatment, we see a difference in growth of 10 kilos up to weaning. And this difference is maintained also after weaning. I just want to make a point here that 20% is very high. So that can be challenged for a calf in a commercial situation, a commercial farm situations. We know that in the universities, in trials, normally we have more control. We have less animals, so we have more control over the animals. Need to be very careful with the osmolality of the final solution, but also with the availability of water. You see here in this trial that the amount of water that the calves drink also increase when you increase the concentration. So if you want to feed your calves at a higher concentration, make sure they have available water, good quality water. We recommend on average 150 to 160 grams per liter for enrichment. Maximum 175 when the farm have a very good management. So what about milk replacers? I spoke a lot about cow's milk. Well, milk replacers, they are fine-tuned to the need of the calf, but also the need of the calf in a farm system. So what is the need of the calf in a farm system? Most of the time, the calves are fed in a bucket. They are fed 2 times per day or 3 times per day. So it is not the same need as when the calf is with the mother, drinking directly from the mother. So it's designed to fulfill the calf requirement. Also is fine-tuned for the optimal level of vitamins, minerals, and trace elements. It has a constant composition. So always the same amount of protein, same amount of fat. it's easier to feed intensive schedule because you can feed more concentrated. So in cow's milk, if you want to feed more dry matter, you need to increase the volume significantly, and that can be challenging for the calf as well, especially the young calf. With milk replacer, you can feed at higher solid concentration. Always in the right temperature if prepared correctly, and that helps to prevent rumen drinking. And it has a lower pH, so you reduce the bacterial spoilage after the preparation and while the milk is in the bucket. Milk replacers, they are also fine-tuned. They can also be fine-tuned for the health of the calf. So if you think about a milk replacer fed to a ruminant is really the perfect vehicle to add the additives, the bioactive components that will support not only the growth, but that will also support the health of the calf. So our milk replacers, for example, they are all enriched with this objective. The calf needs to grow, and a growing calf needs to be a healthy calf. So, for example, for the gut health, you can add specific fatty acids that will aid the intestinal barrier of the calf. We also add yeast that will help to have a balanced microbiota in the intestine of the calf. It also binds toxins and pathogens and drag them away of the calf. And a milk replacer, it's also fine-tuned for a high level of medium-chain fatty acids. We know that medium-chain fatty acids is very important because it's a very fast source of energy for the young calf, and it also have antimicrobial properties. We can also add aids for the digestive support. So, for example, probiotics that will support the right microflora to establish in the intestine of these calves, and it also improves the digestibility of the nutrients of the milk. We boost the antioxidant support with more vitamin C, vitamin E, and more organic selenium. And we boost the immune system support by increasing also the vitamin C, vitamin D, and the vitamin E. So our calves, we care for them. We also ask a lot for them. We want them to grow very well. We group house them. We create them in a system that has a lot of pathogen pressure. So it's only fair that we also give them some extra support. And we can also get inspired by the positive things of whole milk. So, for example, especially colostrum, but also whole milk, has milk oligosaccharides. And those are milk sugar structures that have a really broad activity in inhibiting pathogens, but also selecting for the positive gut microbe. It promotes the gut barrier function, and overall, it supports the immune system. This is very much studied in baby health, and most of infant formulas, they are already enriched with milk oligosaccharides. So inspired by colostrum and inspired by human nutrition as well, we also developed these milk oligosaccharides to enrich milk replacer. So we did a few trials here in our farm. This is published as an abstract in ADSA, and the results we achieved was that calves, they were almost 5 kilos heavier after weaning by the enrichment of milk oligosaccharides. And that's because we had a supported gut function, and the calves, they were also more feed efficient, and they had also a better growth during the weaning because of that. The risk of respiratory problems was reduced by almost 20. And we measured that by the use of respiratory medication on those calves. We did this trial with more than 400 calves. So it supports the development of a healthy and balanced immune system. You also don't want to boost the immune system, so your cows will use a lot of energy to boost an immunity that it doesn't want. You just want the immune system to be supported. So the final result was more resilient calves. But there are also points of attention when you are feeding calf milk replacer. First one, be very critical. There is a lot of variation in milk replacers. Some difference can be seen on the label. Other difference are not really so easy to identify just by the label when it comes to the quality of the ingredients, for example, that are used on that milk replacer. Also, you should be critical when it comes to the choice of which product is most fit to your system. For example, we have a broad range of different types of products. And the idea is that different farms will have different needs, and it needs to be matched. The second point is good quality water. So milk replacer is 85% water. If you don't have water free of contaminants, free of bacteria, the final liquid feed, so after preparation, that will not be of good quality. So good quality water is essential for farms that want to use milk replacer. And the third one is the preparation. We spoke about consistency of nutrient. Milk replacer is more consistent, and it is in the bag, but it also needs to be prepared in a very consistent way. So you have the same day, every day, the same amount of nutrients, the same concentration, same temperature fed to the cows. So when you are mixing in a tank, having very good protocols, it's extremely important. When you are using an automatic feeding, the checking of the settings regularly, that's also very important for this consistency. So I want to go back to my first question when I started this talk. What does a calf need? Well, a calf needs easily digestible energy and high quality protein. And that can be supplied both with a high quality milk replacer and with cow's milk. And please notice, I'm not talking about waste milk here. I'm just talking about bulk tank milk. A calf needs minerals, trace elements, and vitamins. And that's provided in an optimum way with milk replacer. But that's an attention point for cow's milk. So supplementation is desirable. A calf also needs bioactive components, so those proteins, sugars that are present in colostrum. It really supports the growth of the calf, and that's present in cow's milk, but it can also be included in a good milk replacer. It can also be added in a milk replacer. A calf needs to consume solid feed and forage. So in this case, milk replacer have an advantage because it does stimulate the intake of solid feed, while weaning a calf on cow's milk can be more challenging. And the last thing that a calf needs is consistency. So it's more practical to achieve consistency with a milk replacer when you have a proper protocol. It's an attention point for cow milk. So it needs to be really managed in the right way. So the temperature of drinking, the concentration, and also the nutritional content should be consistent. So I'm leaning towards the end of my talk, and I listed a few points that I would like you to remember. First point, colostrum first. So that's the most important feeding in the life of a calf. Ensure that every cow receives 200 grams of IgG in the first 3 hours or 400 grams within the first 24 hours. Don't waste transition milk, it's valuable. If you have the possibility, pasteurize it, freeze it, feed it to calves in the following days after colostrum. Never feed antibiotic milk to calves. It can contribute to antibiotic resistance in your herd, even when you feed the bull calves. Be aware of the risks of feeding whole cow milk and implement strategies to mitigate them. So we discussed it here: pasteurization, acidification, supplementation with vitamins and minerals, how to keep it consistent, increasing the solid content. And the last point, calf milk replacers, they are really formulated to meet the needs of the calf, but also to support the health of the calves in a farm setting. So with that, I would like to thank you for their attention. You can use the Q&A box to ask questions,
Yes,
and I'll hand it over to Michael.
yes, I summarized the questions for you, Isabella.
Okay.
So the first question is about the transition milk graph. How many days is the extra 3 kilogram of body weight increase over pre-weaning? It says day 2 to 4. Maybe you can go back to that slide
Yeah,
or
I think I need to go back to the slide.
the transition milk graph. How many days is the
Yeah,
extra 3 kilogram of body weight increase over the pre-weaning?
because I think it's by the end of the weaning, but maybe I can give a better answer if I go back to the graph. Yes. Yeah, because the weight gain is quite low. So I think it's only really on those after the 4 days. So not on the
Okay.
not on the end of the weaning.
Yeah, okay.
But I remember from the trial that they were also heavier after weaning.
Okay.
So that's
And
just
then
the yeah.
with the Van Zust et al. Studies, what was different in the transition milk relative to the milk replacer that stimulated the extra intestinal development?
Yeah.
Butyric
So
acid, lactoferrin, insulin? Question mark.
yeah. So in this trial, they actually sorry, let me go. In this trial, they actually just used transition milk. So they didn't really establish which component in transition milk would give these results. But there are hypotheses. So the IgGs, they have the stronger hypothesis is that the IgGs, they have also a positive effect when they are even when they are not absorbed. So IgGs are large molecules. They are absorbed in the first 24 hours. They can be a little bit absorbed up to 72 hours after birth, but there is also a topic effect of the IgGs in the intestinal cells of the calf. And that's not yet completely well described, but we see also positive results when you feed colostrum to a calf with diarrhea, for example, even when they are older. So it's not only the IgG that is absorbed, but it's just the presence of the IgGs in the intestine. Transition milk, like you said, also have other components like insulin, for example. We also don't fully understand what is the role of insulin in colostrum, but there must be a role. It is not absorbed by the intestine, but maybe there is a signaling mechanism in the intestinal cells that support this healthier intestinal development. Sorry, I'll go back to the last slide.
Okay. Next question. The recommendations regarding minerals, vitamins has been lowered in the last couple of years. Which recommendations do we or do you use?
So in our milk replacers, we use a combination of the NRC 2021. So that's the latest one for calves. Some recommendations, some minerals and vitamins, the recommendations were indeed lowered. Some of them were increased. So that's our source for our premix. But for some, for example, vitamin C, there is not really much, there is not really a recommendation according to the NRC. And then we look at the literature to see what is more specific for vitamin C in calves, and then we follow that recommendation. So basically, NRC for everything that there is a recommendation NRC, and for everything else, we look to other literature, and we also run trials in our own farm to confirm what we propose.
Okay. Then a quick question, when we can start to feed milk replacer to a newborn calf?
You can start to feed on day 2 after colostrum. A good milk replacer, of course, that's possible, and calves, they can do well. They will do better if they are fed colostrum or transition milk in the first 3 days of life.
Okay. And then maybe also linked to this one a bit, how can a farm practically evaluate different commercial CMR products? Any tips, advice to evaluate CMRs at a farm?
Yeah. So I think it always starts at the label, of course, but the label will just tell you so much of what you need to know. So at the label, you can look at the ingredients of the milk replacer. You can look at the protein and fat level. So you want a balance between protein and fat. You don't want too much protein. You don't want too little protein. We recommend, we have products between 20 and 26% protein. And it really all depends on what is the objective of the farm. And the most important is the high quality of this protein. The quality of the protein is not possible to evaluate just from the label. So what I always say is talk to your supplier, ask for trial results from the supplier, and in the end, you need to try it in the farm. That's the best way to see if it will really work for you.
And content of CMR, fat, protein, casein, whey. I think you already addressed it in the previous question. It depends a bit also the cost of the product, of course, but there's different CMRs with higher and lower protein. But
Yeah,
maybe protein is often a big topic.
yeah,
Everybody wants high protein, and sometimes in certain markets, it's not always ideal to have higher protein, I believe.
yeah.
Could you maybe elaborate a bit?
I can elaborate a little bit on that. So cows, they need protein to grow, right? But they need protein and they need energy. So what do you want is to have a good balance between protein and energy. If you have an excess of protein in relation to energy, the cow will use the protein as an energy source. And that's inefficient because the more protein, the more expensive is the product, but it can also be a burden in the metabolism of the cow. So you want the cow to use protein for protein deposition and energy to energy deposition. When you have a situation with a lot of infection pressure, so a lot of pathogens, if you feed the milk replacer with a lot of protein, with too much protein, I would say 25% and above, and the cow is not able to digest this protein will be source of, will be substrate for the pathogenic bacteria. So that can go wrong. If you have a system where the hygiene protocol are in place, very good manager, very fine-tuned, then you can work with higher protein levels in the milk replacer to increase the growth of the cow. But just giving them more protein without solving the management problems will not lead to a higher growth. The other important point is that the cow is not what you give to the cow is not a percentage of protein. It depends on how much milk you give to the cow. So we have trials here with milk replacers with 20% protein, which is more on the lower side, and the calves on the first 12 weeks, they grow 1 kilo. Pre-weaning, they can grow 800, 850, 900 grams on a 20% protein. But it depends on how much you give it to them. as well. Are you feeding 2 times or are you feeding 3 times? So there is not really a one size fits all. Otherwise, we could have only one protein and fat level. Fat is also um, important. So you don't want very low fat in a milk replacer for a calf that will be fed, for example, during cold stress or during heat stress. You want them this extra energy to support. But what is the digestibility of the fat? So it's not only about how much fat, but the source of fat and how this fat is encapsulated in the CMR.
Okay.
So
We're running a bit
I
out of
don't have a
time.
recipe. Yeah.
So we are running a bit out of time. Let's do one more question, and then we have to finalize, and we will reply the other questions after the webinar. Should we adopt any transition strategies while shifting a calf from whole milk to milk replacer?
If you're shifting directly like from colostrum transition milk to milk replacer, then no, you can switch immediately. If you are changing, for example, it's very common that farms, they feed 2 weeks whole milk when the calves are still in the nursery. And then when they transition to the rearing barn, they change to milk replacer. Then yes, you should feed at least one day 50% milk, 50% milk replacer if you are using a skim milk based product, and at least 4 to 5 days mixing gradually milk replacer with the whole milk if you are using a whey based product.
Okay. I think the rest of the questions we will handle afterwards and send to you. We don't have enough time.
Okay, want me to go here?
Okay, so Isabella already explained a bit about Vital ID. So our milk replacers contain, let's say, an umbrella of selected components to improve the health and the digestion, and so also the performance of your animals. So it's not just a milk replacer, we also try to further improve our products. Okay.
Sorry, it's a bit slow to move.
So here you see some product pictures. We have several products from Royal 50, which is 50% skim milk, to Royal 30, and also whey-based products. So it really depends on the farmer's preference. We could, of course, give a guidance on which one we recommend for certain countries or markets. Okay.
Sorry, it's not working. It's a bit slow to move. Yeah.
Okay, if you would like to have more information, we have a YouTube channel. At the bottom, you see my email. You can always reach out to me. Um, After you close the webinar, there should be a survey. We would really appreciate it if you could fill it in with feedback, what you'd like to see differently, or maybe a topic for a next webinar we could host. Please share your thoughts. We would really appreciate to learn from you. And like I said, the remaining questions we will handle and we will reply to you afterwards. I would say big thanks for everybody, also Isabella for being the presenter. Very interesting. And I would say goodbye for now, and let's see you in the next webinar.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Also, thank you for answering the poll questions.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye
Bye.
bye.